welcome to Rush Roundtable. This is episode 257, where four of us are going to be talking about the best album opener closer combinations. Before we get into that, we want to thank our sponsor, who is Fantunes, who created this Where's Getty, Alex, and Neil Rush book, where as you go in through the book, you have to look throughout very copious amounts of Rush art-themed artwork down to the littlest details, and Didex and Narpits are on one page, and Xanadu's on another, etc., through all eras of Rush, and you have to find Getty, Alex, and Neil. Get yourself one of these. The link will be below, and check out our other sponsors while you're at it, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to our host, Ryan.
It's basically I Spy for Rush, correct?
Exactly.
All right. Shout out Fantunes for sponsoring the video. Thank you, David and Fantunes. You do great work for the Rush community. So yes, this video opening, closing combos. What are the best tracks that are pairs? The song that opens the album, the song that closes the album. In the past, we did what we think the best openers are. We also did what we think the best closers are. Now we're going to give you what we think the best combos are between the two of them. So we might think one album has a great opener and a bad closer, or vice versa. So how this is going to work, we're going to start in the top left with Randy, then David, myself, and Paul. We're going to go around the roundtable 3 times. We're more or less going to rank 3, 2, 1. So we're going to give you what we think are the top 3 album opener and closer combos. We're going to go around 3 times. So we'll start with number 3. Randy, you can go ahead and go first.
Hey, so my rankings for 3, 2, 1 are actually 3 different decades, starting with the 70s, and that would be Hemispheres, because it's my favorite of their 4 major suites, and it ends with La Villa Strangiato, which is one of the best instrumentals ever, and Hemispheres in particular has a special place in my heart because I'm a Wagnerian, and it's the first time they really used leitmotifs in an incredibly sophisticated way. It's kind of makes 2112 is the Mozart to the Wagner of Hemispheres for the opera heads out there.
I like that.
Cool.
Awesome. Good pick. David?
Okay, impossible task almost, but for number 3, I am going with The Big Money and Mystic Rhythms. And the reason why, I like how they start out, obviously the Big Money, corporate stuff, that critique, but they end the album then on a primal note with Mystic Rhythms, kind of getting back to who we are primally speaking.
All right. Well, number 3 for me was Power Windows, The Big Money, and Mystic Rhythms.
I saw the look on your face.
Yeah.
That didn't take long.
I was hoping we wouldn't repeat in the same round, but and my explanation was more or less the same thing that David just said. So I literally told you 3 not to pivot mid-episode before we started, but I'm going to go ahead and do that just so that there's not the same answer in the same round.
Or I could just leave.
You could. I can. I do have the power to kick you. So
kill me. Yeah.
So, this is. I have 2. I'm gonna go with one that's pretty damn controversial, I think, and that's a Hold Your Fire. Force 10. I think. Yeah, I figured nobody would pick this one. I hope so. What you're probably all thinking, maybe not you 3, but actually probably you 3 as well, that I'm an idiot because it has High Water at the end of it, right? So you probably all think, okay, Force 10 is a great opener, but High Water, like, what? So I really think that High Water, we all know why Force 10 is a great opener. Let me start there. Drum intro, synth, it just serves as a great opener. I think it opened shows, or it was at the very beginning of shows, and so it just works as an opener. But High Water is where this pick, I think, drums up some controversy. But I really do think that High Water is a fantastic closing track for this record. it mentions in the lyrics, the water takes you home. Well, what is, hey, take it home? Well, that means wrap it up. Well, that's what it's doing. It's wrapping up the album. But on top of that, it deals with the whole album deals with thematically, time and instinct. And we talked about this all throughout the Hold Your Fire song discussions. And there's nothing more instinctive to humans than water. So let's wrap up the album with that topic. I think it doesn't have to be the greatest hit song to fit this subject matter, this topic. It just has to be an excellent closer. And I think High Water is just that. So whether you like it, whether you've never even heard the track before because you stop at Taishan and say screw this, fine. But maybe you should listen to it from top to bottom and understand that High Water is an excellent closing track. So
It's my number 5 on my list.
yeah, good.
Okay, well, you don't have to worry about all the heat being on you because my number 3 is definitely going to pull it off. That I'm going with Show Don't Tell and Available Light. The reason I'm picking that one for my third best is I actually watched the music video for Show Don't Tell, and I went, yeah, I can't skip it. I know big shock with me going with Presto, but it really is what I put down note wise for myself was perfectly sums up Presto's theme of perception. I'm a big theme junkie. Anybody who's watched our song roundtables knows that. Show Don't Tell comes in with a sharp master class of jazzy playing and showmanship, introducing the idea that looks matter and what's observed is to be believed. Musically, it sums up exactly where Rush was in 1989, which is clear, punch-filled, and impressive instrumentally. Available Light is the soft, introspective photo negative to that what you see in the here and now is what matters in that moment. That's what should be believed. It has one of Getty's all-time vocal highlights, and is still considered to be one of the best songs they did that was never performed live. So that's why I picked it for number 3.
That was my number 4.
Cool.
All right.
What's
Randy,
your
you're
number
up. Number 2.
Number 2, Grace Under Pressure. Just an early warning and Between the Wheels. Between the Wheels was always one of my top 10 Rush tracks ever. And it was great back in the mixtape day to sneak it onto the mixes to people. And I think it's a contender for maybe the angstiest song they ever wrote. And I always appreciated that the music of it, the feeling of being in a machine and the darkness, the drop D, like heaviness and so on. But then I saw them live in 2003, Vapor Trails tour. Again, America had just gone to war for the second time in 2 years. And when Getty started singing this, there was a spin to his delivery that made me realize that, this song is actually about patriotism gone toxic in a way too. There's a lot of allusions in the lyrics to essentially, that of the many forces that can crush a person, there's also the sort of paramilitary and flag waving, elements of society. And I started to hear that song as almost like a protest song. So this is a song that traveled from just a real emotional punch to an extremely political, topical song over its journey. And then they never stopped playing it in their final years, except for that one tour. But basically, it became, I think, a minor classic over its life. Distant Early Warning was just one of the best one of the best videos they ever did. It's the song that got me into Rush when I was growing up. But because it was MTV, which we didn't have in my house, I was at friends' houses, and they're standing in front of the map of the world, and I couldn't read on the CRT TV what exactly it was. I just saw it was 4 letters, and because of they used the Mercator map in the background, which makes Asia look much bigger than it is, I thought the band was Asia, and it sent me down the wrong path for like a couple of years before I figured out who it really was. But so Grace Under Pressure is terrific bookends.
Great
And
choice.
shout out to Howard Ungerleider on the lighting in the live performances Between the Wheels.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Number two, I'm going to go with counterparts, Animate and Everyday Glory. Animate because what an opener, what a great song. But again, my picks are kind of doing the juxtaposition angle. And, Animate it has a lot of Jungian archetypes within it, and it's very symbolic and everything, but with the theme of that entire album, by the time you get to Everyday Glory, what they're talking about, what Neil wrote about in Animate is put in real life in Everyday Glory, in the difficulties that uh, are faced in our human interaction and our different levels and kinds of relationships. And then the way it fades out, it's just a perfect, beautiful fade out as an album closer as well. So musically, I'll put that in there.
All
I'm
right.
watching facial expressions.
Well, that was my for me. That was my alternate because you stole my power windows. So that was my alternate with Hold Your Fire. The other two that I was thinking of. So I'm glad it was mentioned.
All
So
right.
for me, for my number two, it's going to 1980 and Permanent Waves. I, the spirit of radio really needs no explanation, I guess, but I think again going with themes and words and that I guess match album names, right? Invisible airwaves, permanent waves. It talks about radio waves and quite literally radio, and it's a classic. It's a fantastic opener for both that album and for the Time Machine tour and other tours. But for me, the Time Machine tour was my first, and uh, can't beat it. I think it's the ultimate album opener and show opener. Natural Science being the closer. You know, wave after wave, we flow with the tide. It also talks about waves, but completely different physical waves, water. Again, the theme of water as the closer. With Hold Your Fire. So, plus it's just a fantastic. It's kind of sort of other than the camera eye, but that kind of intertwines with moving pictures. It's kind of sort of really the last prog rock epic they did. Um, so um, I think it just fits as the closer for Permanent Waves, the closing track on side B of that record, and I think it's hard to top. Granted, it's my number two, and you'll understand why it's my number two once we get to number one. But it quite literally is probably going to show up on a lot of people's lists. I think, at least maybe not you guys, but in the comments, and whatnot. So definitely a great opener closer combination. Permanent Waves.
Okay, so now I have to determine whether or not I'm going to pivot because same round, same choice. I have counterparts as well. So, and for a lot of the same reasons that David just listed. So, I guess I'll pivot, and I will go with what'll doubtlessly be a surprise for me, but I will not be as articulate as I am with my number three and my number one. And I'm going to go with 2112. Opening with 2112 and closing with Something for Nothing, because I do think that these two songs in all of 2112 suites and pieces and Something for Nothing they're quintessential Rush. There's no getting around that. I was debating fitting it in and bumping one of my other ones. I wasn't going to, but it really does work. And since David said almost exactly what I put down for this one, I do think that 2112 does deserve to be on this list, especially with Something for Nothing being the closer, because both songs, both musically and lyrically, do encapsulate what Rush was in the 70s. Be it, like I said, be it the musicianship involved and in Neil's lyrics. So I would like to be more articulate, but we'd be here all night, and you could check out our deep dive series for that and the 2112 deep dive that David and I were on as well. So for further information. Back to you.
You did the 2112 deep dive?
Yes, I did. Not
For
the
that?
album deep dive. We did the story
For
of
the
2112
story of
deep dive.
okay. I was
Me,
gonna
David,
say,
Donna,
okay.
and Jim Benner.
Gotcha. Well, that's a
So
hell of a good cast right there. I have to go check that out.
Absolutely. Check it out on Rush Fans.
It's probably what, a year ago, 2 years at this point. I don't remember. That's why
About a year, yeah.
I didn't remember. Let's do this. If your number one has been said, even if it's said in the same round, keep it because
keeping
it's your number one, right? So explain, right? But go ahead and keep it. Yeah. So Randy, you're up. Number one.
Well, my number one is Counterparts. And
Keep it.
but it's my favorite record. And I love the juxtaposition of those two songs in particular has a fascinating musical thing to it that I find amazing. Which is that Animate is like in the music, we call it horizontal. It's extremely driving. It's got a tremolo bass and it feels just all forward momentum. And Everyday Glory is extremely vertical. It's these big dropped chords and it's got lots of space. But Getty, in both songs, Getty is doing it's like anthemic high singing, especially the bridge in Everyday Glory. If the future is looking dark and suddenly Neil's just playing the snare and it's like amazing. And whereas Animate doesn't have a moment to breathe. It's just a massive ride. So juxtapositions in that are just terrific. I came up with a backup though, which I thought was actually on this, the VHS, but it turns out it's on this, the DVD, which is that there's a hidden track. There are two hidden tracks on this actually, but it takes you from Closer to the Heart all the way to After Image, which is a really interesting mix of basically like, I would say, maybe the sweetest, kind of most vulnerable stuff they ever wrote, except one is in a sort of classical radio-friendly format, and the other is like one of the deepest cuts that they did. But they still made a video for it, which is amazing. And those are two of my favorite songs, especially Closer to the Heart live, with the audience singing and so forth. And After Image is just, I can't find a tribute to Neil online that doesn't include snippets of that song. Sometimes that's even the name of the video.
Suddenly you were gone. Yeah, probably, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Randy snuck one in there. He snuck in an honorable mention.
Got that.
I love it. All right, David, you're up. Number one.
Okay, my number one, Caravan and the Garden, and several reasons why. But if you're familiar with, for those of you who've read the novel, you know a little bit more going on in the story than you can pick up in the songs. But Owen Hardy, the protagonist, he's young in the caravan. He can't stop thinking big. He's going to the city from his little town of Beryl Arbor. And, his whole life's ahead of him. He's young and he's going off on all these adventures, right? Uh, by the time you get to the garden, he's gotten much older and he's just glad now to look back to know what he's done. And what his job is now is to tend his garden and to have lived the kind of life that, gains respect, the measure of a life. Yeah, young or old to young, juxtaposition in that one. And since Randy doing an honorable mention, I'll do a quick one too, just because. Far Cry and We Hold On from Snakes and Arrows. That's not much of a juxtaposition there because Far Cry it's a far cry from the world we thought we'd inherit, but you get to the end of the record and We Hold On. So that's my honorable mention.
Take a guess what my number one is.
Snakes and Arrows.
No.
U2?
My number one, Clockwork
Okay.
Angels. Take a guess
I
what
can
my
see
honorable
this
mention
one.
was going to be.
Snakes and Arrows.
Snakes and Arrows.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'll have to find a new honorable mention, but I just want to piggyback on the Clockwork Angels. When we did best openers, I think if I remember correctly, Caravan was my number one. When we did best closers, I think The Garden was my number one. it's hard to. They might not be the best songs, your Tom Sawyer's, Spirit of Radios of the world are the radio hits that are the openers, and then there's some other tracks that might be better closers, but or better songs or more popular songs that are the last track on the record. But I don't know how you pick any other record for number one here because of the way the album flows and the way it's supposed to flow with the story. And I didn't even read the entirety of the book. I read about half the book, 40% of the book. Um, but you still understand and you know the story, right? And you can follow the story and you know kind of what happens sequentially through the songs. And I think I just don't know how you pick any other album that's a better opener and closer combo than the one that flows quite literally sequentially on purpose, right? So I guess for an honorable mention, I'll go to Subdivisions and Countdown for Signals because we, Eric hosted Signals as a concept album a couple weeks back and spoke to that and why thematically it just works. And um, I think just starting not only is Subdivisions a fantastic popular radio hit track that resonates with all of us as Rush fans. Um, Countdown, you got the beautiful keyboard solo. It's space exploration, and it's the '80s. Although I wasn't born, it was you know the it talks about the race to space and all that, and it just fits as a fantastic closing track. I think so, and a handful of people I do believe had that on their lists when we did the closer episode. So I thought it'd be a good honorable mention to have on here.
Yeah.
Signals.
Well, one thing I forgot to say about Clockwork Angels, it's in some ways the story of Rush, if not the story of Neil, the young adventurer, who then he just wanted to go be dad to Olivia again, in his gardens. Sorry, I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, well, since we're not pivoting, I'll stick with my original, which of course is Caravan in the Garden. What a shock. So, Caravan is Rush firing on all cylinders, expertly painting a musical picture of the steampunk world Owen lives in. Both musically and lyrically, it tells us the opening of the story of a boy who can't stop thinking big, growing in a world of fire and steam, cause and effect, determinism, and free will. Musically, it has all the elements of a Rush opener, driving guitars, expression-laden bass, foundational drums, accenting keys, and inspirational strings. In the garden, this boy has grown into a man who looks back at a life of failures and victories, illusions and realities, decisions and consequences that have allowed him to realize his life has been one of tending the garden of his life and appreciating the fruits of it. Musically, it opens humbly and beautifully, then grows with the electric guitar, melodic bass, and perfectly accented drums, all emphasizing a watchmaker's precision with the string ensemble, infusing the song with transcendence that symbolizes growth and appreciation for everything that has come before it. So, and for honorable mention, I'm actually going to throw out a show of hands sequentially for me because Big Money, killer opener. And that version of Closer to the Heart is one of my favorites. I can't say it's my favorite, but it's one of my favorites. And it's one of the few times anyone has extended a song, and I actually enjoyed it. Normally, that's a huge concert pet peeve of mine, is extending a song. But I really like the way they did it with Closer to the Heart on Show of Hands. So, those are mine.
Cool.
I think to wrap this episode up, I think if you're a more casual Rush fan or even some of the more hardcore Rush fans, I think we use the word theme a lot tonight, but I think there's a theme in all of our choices too, and that a lot of the opening tracks are hits. A lot of the closing tracks aren't, but it does feel like Rush was always very good at constructing where songs flow with album flow, right? And a lot of these songs are perfect album closers, whether they're hits or not, radio friendly or not. They fit sequentially as the closing track on the record, right? So, um, I think just you know give them the appreciation where it's needed, and that's album construction, right, and song order and such. So, um,
I've noticed doing my research that a lot of album closers are songs about kind of the future. They're about moving on, looking ahead. It's almost like the statement's been
yeah,
made. Now we're on to the next thing, and there's a sort of a lot of the final songs are really driving and kind of outward looking. It's part of their kind of like um,
Repertoire.
we now that we all understand this theme, say there's more worlds to conquer intellectually.
it's a great way to put it. What albums did we miss? The first album that crossed my mind. I'll say that much. Fly By Night we didn't hit. Caress of Steel we didn't hit. A Farewell to Kings we didn't hit. Moving Pictures we did not hit.
That's a surprise.
Roll the Bones. Test for Echo.
Yeah.
And Vapor Trails. I debated Vapor Trails for I don't know, mention. Yeah, but I thought Signals made a little bit more sense to talk about. But if you, the viewer, think any of those I don't know, 8 or 9 albums we missed deserve to be in a top 3, leave a comment and give your opinions, or agree or disagree to what the 4 of us mentioned on this episode. So with that, what are we doing next week, Paul? Do we have a topic for next week?
Yeah, next week is going to be Alex Kelly will be hosting a Songs Without Solos episode where we talk about songs that either don't have solos and are better for it, or are there songs that could have used solos? Because we've seen what Alex could have done with it. So a guitar-centric episode.
What does Song Like Hope count as a solo or not?
Tune in next week and find out.
Okay.
The foreshadowing. He's learning. I love it. All right. No. So yeah, leave a comment. Check out our shop. Check out our Ko-fi. Check out our sponsors. Check out our Instagram and our Twitter. Rush Fans, Rush Lyrics on Instagram. @ Rush Fans on Twitter. And yes, check out Fantunes. Get yourself a copy of that book. If you don't see me, have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, but Happy New Year. But see y'all later. Take care, everybody.